The Young King and Other Stories by Oscar Wilde. The Young King. The young king was alone in his beautiful room in the palace. He was only 16 years old, and he was wild-eyed like an animal of the forest. The old king's servants found him in the forest. At that time, the boy believed that he was the son of a poor forester. He was brought up by the forester, but now he knew that he was the child of the old king's daughter. The king's daughter married an ordinary man, a painter. He painted pictures on the walls of the great church where kings were crowned. But one day he disappeared, leaving the pictures unfinished. The week-old baby was taken away from his mother's side while she slept. The forester and his wife had no children, and the baby was given to them. The princess died. When the old king was dying, he said, "My heart is heavy because I have done a terrible thing. The crown must not pass away from my family. Bring my daughter's child from the forest. He will be king after me." When the boy was brought to the palace, he showed a strange love for beautiful things. He gave a happy cry when he saw his fine new clothes and rich jewels. He quickly took off the old coat that he wore in the forest. He walked through the palace from room to room, looking at everything. A rich man came to see the young king one day. He found him on his knees in front of a beautiful picture from Venice. On another day, people searched for the king for hours. They finally found him in a little room at the north end of the palace. He was looking at the shape of the Greek god Adonis cut in a jewel. In bed that night, the young king thought about the beautiful clothes for his special day, a gold coat and a jeweled crown. People were working day and night to finish the clothes in time. The young king imagined himself in the great church, dressed as a king. His eyes closed and he fell asleep. As he slept, he dreamed. He dreamed that he was standing in a long, low room. Around him were cloth-makers at work. Only a little daylight came in through narrow windows. The men's faces were pale and thin. Little children were working with them. They were weak and hungry, and their little hands shook. The young king went to watch one of the cloth-makers. The man looked at him angrily. "Why are you watching me?" he said. "Did our employer ask you to watch us?" "Who is your employer?" asked the young king. "He is a man like me. But unlike me, he wears fine clothes, and while I am hungry, he has too much food." "You are not a slave," said the young king. "Your employer does not own you." "The rich make the poor their slaves," answered the cloth-maker. "We must work to live, but they pay us too little and we die. Men call us free, but we are slaves. But these things do not matter to you. You are not one of us. Your face is too happy." He turned away and continued his work. Then the young king saw that the cloth-maker was making gold cloth. He felt a sudden fear. "Who are you making that cloth for?" he asked. "I am making it for the crowning of the young king." The young king woke up with a loud cry. He was in his own room in the palace. Through the window he saw the golden moon hanging in the sky. The young king fell asleep again and dreamed. He dreamed that he was on a ship. Hundreds of slaves were working on the ship. They were wearing only simple cloths round their waists, and each man was tied to the man next to him. The hot sun shone down on them without pity. A man ran up and down between the slaves. He hit them until the blood came, "Work faster," he ordered. At last the ship stopped near some land. The seaman took one of the youngest slaves, tied a stone to his feet, and let him down over the side of the ship. After some time they pulled him out of the water. He had a pearl in his right hand. The seaman took it from him, then pushed him back into the water. The young slave came up again and again. Each time he brought with him a beautiful pearl. The seaman put the pearls in a green bag. Then the slave came up for the last time. This time he brought the best pearl of all. It was shaped like the full moon, and it was brighter than the morning star. But the face of the slave was strangely white. He fell down on the ship, and blood came from his ears and mouth. "Dead?" cried one of the seamen. "Throw the body into the sea." He looked at the pearl. "This will be for the crowning of the young king." When the young king heard this, he woke up with a great cry. Through the window the stars were growing weak and daylight was coming. The young king fell asleep again and dreamed. He was walking through a dark forest full of strange fruit and flowers. He continued walking until he came out of the forest. There he saw a great crowd of men working in a dry river. They were making large holes in the ground and breaking the rocks with tools. The young king turned and saw an old man standing behind him with a mirror in his hand. "Who are these men?" he asked. "The people in the walled cities have no food and little water," said the old man. "But these men are working in the river to find—" "What are they trying to find?" "Jewels for a king's crown," said the old man. "For which king?" "Look in the mirror, and you will see him." The young king looked in the mirror and saw his own face. He woke up with a great cry. Bright sunlight was shining into the room, and in the garden outside birds were singing in the trees. Government officers came into the young king's room and greeted him. Servants brought the coat made of gold cloth. Other servants placed the crown and fine jewels in front of him. The young king looked at the lovely things. They were very beautiful. But he remembered his dreams and said, "Take them away. I will not wear them." The government officers were very surprised. Some of them thought that he was joking. They laughed. He spoke to them again. "Take these things away. I will not wear them. This cloth was made by the white hands of pain. There is blood in the jewels and death in the heart of the pearl." And he told them his 3 dreams. When the men heard this, they said to him, "You do not know what you are saying. A dream is only a dream. It is not real. We cannot worry about the people who work for us. And if you do not wear these clothes and this crown, you will not look like a king. How will the people know that you are king?" "Perhaps you are right," answered the young king. "But I will not wear this coat, and I will not wear this crown. I did not wear fine clothes when I came into the palace. I will go out of the palace in the same way. Go, all of you. Only this boy may stay." The government officers and the servants left. Only one servant, a boy, stayed with the king. The young king opened a big box and took out a rough coat. This was his coat in the days when he watched animals on the hillside for the forester. The young king also took out a stick from the forest. The boy said, "Sir, where is your crown?" The young king cut a piece from a wild rose that grew near the window. He made it into a circle and put it on his head. "This will be my crown," he said. The young king left his room. The government officers were waiting for him. He got up on his horse and rode out through the great gates of the palace towards the church. The boy ran with him. The people in the streets laughed. "This is not the king," they said as he rode past them. He stopped and answered, "I am the king," and he told them his 3 dreams. A man came out of the crowd and spoke angrily to him. "The life of the poor comes from the fine things that rich people use. When we make these things, we can buy bread. Go back to your palace and put on your king's clothes. Why are you worrying about us?" "Aren't rich people and poor people brothers?" asked the young king. His eyes filled with tears as he rode through the angry cries of the people. The boy became afraid and left him. At the great gate of the church, the soldiers tried to stop him. "Only the king can come in here," they said to him. "I am the king," he answered angrily, and he pushed through them. The most important priest in the church was waiting to crown the new king. He saw the young king in his poor clothes, and he went to meet him. "My son," he said, "is this how a king dresses? What crown shall I crown you with? This should be a day of great happiness." "Can happiness wear what sadness and pain have made?" said the king, and he told the high priest his dreams. "I am an old man," answered the high priest. "I know that many wrong things are done in the world, but God has made us this way, and He is wiser than you. The weight of this world's suffering is too heavy for one man." "Can you say that in this house of God?" said the young king. He walked past the high priest and went down on his knees. Suddenly a loud noise came from the street outside. The government officers came into the church shouting, "Where is this dreamer of dreams? Where is the king who is dressed as a servant? He cannot be our king." The young king stood up and turned sadly towards them. Then sunlight shone down through the coloured glass of the church windows. It changed his coat into a coat that was more beautiful than one of gold cloth. From the dead stick white flowers grew that were more beautiful than pearls. The wild roses on his head shone brighter than jewels. He stood there dressed as a king. The light of God filled the place, and there was music and singing. The people fell on their knees. The high priest laid his hands on the young king's head. "Someone has crowned you who is greater than me," he said, and he went down on his knees in front of his king. The birthday of the Infanta. It was the birthday of the Infanta, the daughter of the King of Spain. She was 12 years old. The little princess was playing with her friends in the sun-filled palace garden. From a window in the palace, the king watched her. The Infanta looked just like her mother. The king thought sadly about his young French queen. She died soon after the child was born, before she saw the beautiful flowers in the garden and the fruit on the trees. His love was great, and he could not hide her body in the ground. So an Egyptian doctor worked on her body. It stayed as fresh after death as it was in life. 12 years later, it still lay in the small palace church. Once every month, the king went there and fell down on his knees by her side. He called out, "My queen, my queen." Today, the king watched the Infanta playing in the garden. Memories of his married life returned to him. The Infanta had the same pretty ways as the queen. She moved her head in the same way when she talked. She had the same proud, beautiful mouth, the same wonderful smile. But the king felt very sad. He could not enjoy the children laughing or the sunny garden. When the Infanta looked up again at the window, he was not there. "Why has he gone away?" she said. "When I want him to stay with me on my birthday? Where is he? Has he gone to that dark little church where I cannot go? He is very silly. The sun is shining so brightly and everyone is so happy." She walked to a big tent to watch her birthday show. Don Pedro, her uncle, went with her. The camarera went too. She was a great lady who looked after the Infanta. At the show, some boys rode on wooden horses dressed in bright clothes. An Indian man played music on a pipe and made magic. He covered the sand with a cloth, and a tree grew up out of it. Then flowers grew on the tree. He brought eggs out of his nose. Then he took one egg and changed it into a little bird. The bird flew away, and the children were excited and happy. Some schoolboys did a beautiful dance. Then some Africans sat in a ring and played music. Another man brought in a dog. The animal stood up on its back legs and danced. But the funniest thing was the dancing of an ugly little dwarf. He had very short legs and a very big head. The children laughed and laughed at him. The camarera told the Infanta to be quieter. A princess must not laugh so loudly. The dwarf was found by two rich Spanish men when he was running wild in the forest. His father happily sold his ugly child to them, and they took him to the palace as a surprise for the Infanta. There was one very funny thing about the dwarf. He did not seem to know how strange and ugly he looked. He seemed quite happy. When the children laughed, he laughed too. The Infanta was very amused by him. He could not keep his eyes off her. He seemed to dance just for her. At the end of his dance, she took a white rose out of her hair and threw it to him. He caught the flower and kissed it. Then he put his hand on his heart and went down on one knee in front of her. He was smiling, and his little eyes were bright. The Infanta laughed at this for a long time. She wanted the dwarf to dance again. But the camarera said, "The sun is too hot. The Infanta should go back to the palace for her birthday dinner. The dwarf can dance again for you later." So the Infanta went back to the palace, and the other children followed her. The little dwarf was very, very proud. He ran out into the garden, kissed the white rose, and jumped up and down happily. He told the flowers, "The Infanta has given me this beautiful white rose. She wants me to dance for her a second time." They moved their heads, but they did not seem to hear him. He told the birds, but they did not stop singing. Perhaps their song was about him and the Infanta. "The Infanta has given me a white rose, and she loves me. Oh, I want to be with her in the palace. I can be her friend and play with her and teach her nice things. I can make a pipe and play music on it for her. I can teach her how to call the birds. Yes, she must come to the forest and play with me. We will dance on the fresh grass. When she is tired, I will find a soft bank of flowers for her. Then she can rest on it." He looked at the palace. The doors and windows were shut to keep out the midday heat. Then he saw a little door which was open. He went through it. He was in a beautiful room. There was gold everywhere, and the floor was made of coloured stones. But the little Infanta was not there. The dwarf came to a second room. In the centre there was a big round table with red books on it. This was the room where the government officers met. The little dwarf was afraid, but he thought of the pretty Infanta. "I must continue," he said, "and find her. I will tell her that I love her. I will ask her to come away with me after my dance. I know that she will come to the forest with me." He smiled as he thought of it. He went into the next room. This was the brightest and the most beautiful of all the rooms. The tables and chairs were made of silver, and the floor was of sea-green stone. But he was not alone. He saw someone, a small person, standing in the shadow at the other end of the room, watching him. He shouted with excitement and moved out into the sunlight. As he moved, the other one moved too. He saw it clearly. This was not the Infanta. It was a terrible, ugly thing. It was not shaped like other people. It had short legs and long arms, and its big head was covered with long black hair. He looked angrily at it, and it looked angrily back at him. He laughed, and it laughed. He went towards it, and it came to meet him. "What is it?" He looked at the rest of the room. He could see everything in this wall of clear water. Every picture, every chair, every table. He took the white rose and kissed it. That other one had a rose too. It kissed it and pressed it to its heart. He was looking at himself in a mirror. When he realized this, he fell down on the floor. He cried. He was the ugly one. The children laughed at him, not with him. The little Infanta did not love him. She only laughed at his ugliness. "Why didn't they leave me in the forest? There were no mirrors there, and I never knew. Why didn't my father kill me? Why did he sell me so other people could laugh at me?" Hot tears poured down his face. He pulled the white rose to pieces and threw the pieces away. The other one did the same. When he looked at it looked at him with a face full of pain. He covered his eyes and lay in the shadow. When the Infanta and her friends came into the room, they saw the ugly little dwarf. He was lying on the floor and hitting it with his hands in the strangest way. They shouted happily and stood round and watched. "His dancing was very funny," said the Infanta, "but this is funnier." The little dwarf did not look up. He lay there, crying very quietly. Then he made a strange noise and put his hand on his side. Then he fell back and lay there. "That was wonderful," said the Infanta. "But now you must dance for me." "Yes," cried the children, "get up and dance." But the little dwarf did not answer. The Infanta was angry and called her uncle. He was walking with the king's doctor in the garden outside. "My funny little dwarf is not listening to me," she cried. "You must wake him up. Tell him to dance for me." Don Pedro hit the dwarf. "You must dance," he said. "The Infanta of Spain wants to see you dance." But the little dwarf did not move. The king's doctor looked at the dwarf and put his hand on the little man's heart. "Oh, princess," he said, "your funny little dwarf will never dance again. That is very sad, because he is very, very ugly. Even the king laughed at him." "Why won't he dance again?" asked the Infanta. "Because his heart is broken. He did not want to live, and he is dead." The Infanta was angry. "In future," she cried. "I will only play with people who have no hearts." And she ran out into the garden. The Happy Prince. The statue of the Happy Prince stood high above the city. It was covered with gold. Its eyes were bright blue jewels, and a red jewel hung from its waist. Everyone thought that it was very beautiful. "Why aren't you like the Happy Prince?" mothers said to their little boys when they cried. Sad men looked at the statue and said, "I am glad that someone in the world is happy." One night, a little bird flew alone over the city. The other birds were all in Egypt now. "Where can I stay tonight?" he thought. Then he saw the statue. "I will stay there," he thought. "It is high up, so there is plenty of fresh air." He landed between the feet of the Happy Prince. "I have a golden bedroom," he thought. But as he put his head under his wing, a large drop of water fell on him. He looked up. "That is very strange," he thought. "There is not a cloud in the sky, but it is raining." Then another drop fell. "I cannot stay on a statue that does not keep me dry," he thought. "I must find another place." And he decided to fly away. But as he opened his wings, a third drop fell. He looked up and saw... What did he see? The eyes of the Happy Prince were full of tears. Tears ran down his golden face. The face was very beautiful in the moonlight, and the bird felt sorry for him. "Who are you?" asked the bird. "I am the Happy Prince." "Then why are you crying? I am wet with your tears." "When I was alive," said the prince, "I had a heart like every other man. But I did not know what tears were. I lived in a palace where there was no sadness. In the daytime I played with my friends in a beautiful garden, and in the evening I danced. There was a high wall round the garden, but I did not know what lay on the other side. So I was called the Happy Prince. I was pleased with my little world. Now I am dead, and they have put me up here. I can see all the unhappiness of my city. My heart now is made of a cheap metal, but even that poor heart can feel. And so I cry." "Oh," said the bird to himself, "he is not all gold. He is only gold on the outside." "Far away from here," said the Happy Prince in a low voice, "there is a poor house in a little street. Through an open window I can see a woman at a table. Her face is very thin, and she has rough red hands. She is making a dress for one of the Queen's ladies for a dance in the palace. Her little boy is lying on a bed in the corner of the room. He is very ill. He is crying because she can only give him water from the river. Little bird, will you take my red jewel to her? I cannot move from here." "My friends are waiting for me in Egypt," said the bird. Little bird," said the prince, "please stay with me for one night and do this for me. The boy is crying, and his mother is so unhappy." The Happy Prince looked very sad, and the little bird was sorry for him. "It is very cold here," he said, "but I will stay with you for one night. Tomorrow I will take the jewel." "Thank you, little bird," said the prince. So the bird took the great red jewel from the prince's waist and flew away with it over the roofs of the town. He passed the palace and heard the sound of dancing. A beautiful girl was at a window with her lover. "I hope my dress will be ready for the dance next week," she said. "Those women are so lazy." The bird passed over the river and flew and flew. At last he came to the poor little house and looked inside. The boy was lying on the bed. The mother was asleep. She was so tired. He flew in and put the great red jewel on the table. Then he flew round the bed, moving the air around the boy's face with his wings. "Oh," said the boy, "my face does not feel so hot. I think I am getting better." And he fell asleep. Then the bird flew back to the happy prince. "It is strange," the bird said. "It is very cold, but I feel quite warm." "That is because you have done a good thing," said the prince. The little bird fell asleep. When day came, the bird flew down to the river for a bath. A clever man saw him. "That is very unusual," he said. "That kind of bird here in winter. I must write that down." "I will go to Egypt tonight," thought the bird. When the moon came up, he flew back to the happy prince. "Can I do anything for you in Egypt?" he said. Little bird," said the prince, "please will you stay with me for one more night?" "My friends are waiting for me," answered the bird. "Far away across the city," said the prince, "I can see a young writer in a little room at the top of a house. He is sitting at a table that is covered with papers. At his side there are some dead flowers. He is trying to finish a story, but he is very cold and he cannot write. There is no fire in the room, and he is weak and hungry." "I will wait with you for one more night," said the bird kindly. "What shall I take to him?" "Take him one of my eyes," said the prince. "They are made of beautiful blue stones from India. The young man can sell it and buy wood and food. He can finish his story." "Take out your eye, dear prince," said the bird. "I cannot do that." And he began to cry. "Do it," said the prince. So the bird took out the prince's eye and flew away to the young man's room. It was easy to get in because there was a hole in the roof. The young man was sitting with his head in his hands, so he did not hear the bird's wings. When he looked up, a beautiful blue jewel was lying on the dead flowers. "Someone likes my stories," he cried happily. "This is a gift from someone who has read my books. Now I can finish writing this story." On the next day, the bird flew down to the river. He watched the seamen working on the ships. "I am going to Egypt," he cried, but no one listened to him. When the moon came up, he flew back to the happy prince. "I have come to say goodbye to you," he said. Little bird," said the prince, "please will you stay with me for one more night?" "It is winter," answered the bird. "The snow will soon come. In Egypt the sun is warm and the trees are green. Dear prince, I must leave you, but I will never forget you." A little girl is standing there in the square below. She is selling eggs. Her eggs have fallen on the ground and they are broken. She has no money to take home. Her father will hit her. Take out my other eye and give it to her. "I will stay with you for one more night," said the bird, "but I cannot take out your other eye. You will not be able to see." "Do it," said the prince. So the bird took out the prince's other eye and flew down with it. He flew to the girl and put the jewel in her hand. "This is a beautiful piece of glass," cried the little girl. She ran home laughing. Then the bird flew back to the prince. "You cannot see now," he said, "so I will stay with you." "No," said the poor prince. "You must go to Egypt." "I will stay with you," repeated the bird, and he slept at the prince's feet. The next day he stayed with the prince. He told the prince stories about the strange lands that he knew. "Dear little bird," said the prince, "you are telling me about strange and wonderful things, but the suffering of men and women is stranger than anything. Fly over my city, little bird. Tell me what you see there." So the swallow flew over the great city. He saw the rich eating and drinking in their beautiful houses. He saw the poor people sitting at the gate. He flew into the dark streets and saw the white faces of hungry children with sad eyes. Under a bridge, 2 little boys were lying close together to keep warm. "We are so hungry," they said. "You cannot lie there," shouted a guard. Then the bird flew back and told the prince. "I am covered with fine gold," said the prince. "Take it off piece by piece and give it to my poor people." The bird pulled off the gold until the happy prince looked grey and ugly. The bird took the gold to the poor, and the children's faces became brighter. "We have bread now," they cried. Then the snow came. Ice followed the snow and hung down from the roofs of the houses. Everyone wore thick coats. The little bird became colder. He did not leave the prince because he loved him too much, but he was dying. "Goodbye, dear prince," he said. "Can I kiss you?" "I am glad that you are going to Egypt," said the prince. "You have stayed too long. Kiss me because I love you." "I am not going to Egypt," said the bird. "I am going to the house of death." He kissed the prince and fell down dead at his feet. Then there was a strange sound inside the statue. Crack! The metal heart broke into 2 pieces. Early next morning, an important man in the city was walking below with 2 of his friends. He looked up at the statue. "The happy prince does not look very bright," he said. "The red stone has disappeared. His eyes are not there, and he is not golden. He looks like a beggar." "Yes, he does," said the man's friends. "Here is a dead bird at his feet," said the officer. "We must make an order that birds cannot die here." They pulled down the statue of the happy prince and put it in the fire. A stream of bright metal ran out. "This is strange," said the workman. "This broken piece in the middle of the statue has stayed hard. We must throw it away." So they threw it away with the dead bird. God said to his servants, "Bring me the 2 best things in the city." They brought him the broken heart and the dead bird. "Yes, you have brought the right things," God said. "This little bird will sing forever in my garden, and the happy prince will stand in my city of gold."